Yeah, my name is Godi Keller. I have been teacher for 400 years, like many of us, and it has been my life. I wanted to give you this little picture in front of my talk about assessment. I came a little bit unexpected to this city here in Western Norway, where I now will live, because now the situation is as it is. I cannot travel internationally so much, and and here I was out with some children in the snow last weekend, and then I met a man. And it was very wonderful. We knew each other because we had been students for 1975, I think, for a long time ago. And I had a long life as a teacher, and he had a long life as a teacher. He was teacher in a public school. And then we told each other that we now formally are pensionists now. Then I said, yes, but I cannot stop teaching. I said, I'm not there yet. I cannot do that. How is it with you? And then he said, oh, this shit. I am so finished with it. Oh, wow, never, ever. And then I thought that he could not have been a good teacher. You understand? He could do what kind of, we can do the same kind of assessment, he and me, and it would be totally different. Because in the end, the question of how we evaluate the work of our students is a question of inner attitude. It's not so much a question of formal things. Whether we do this now, it's formative assessment, which is the thing, and then there are maybe all kinds of systems, but in the end, we have always to deal with these two aspects in school. The one is that we have to follow a system, and everyone knows that, and the children know that, the youngsters know that we have to follow a system, but the system is not educating the child. The system does never meet anyone. The system is just a framework. In the end, we have to fill this system with ourselves, with our way to feel and think. And this is the first thing I want to say. I'm not so very interested in the technicalities, how we have to do that, and how this is administrated, because there you have your tradition, your challenges, your way to do it, and in other places it's different. But what we have to work on is, of course, this inner attitude of it. We have, in the end, we are representatives of a pedagogy which is not for the next exam and not for the school system, but an education which is for lifetime. I have done for now 25 years these lectures about life competence. What is it which makes a child skilled to deal with life? And these are criteria which are for everyone, regardless whether you are very clever and sharp in your head, or you are slow, or you are restless, or maybe you have Down syndrome or something. It's for everyone. So these questions, these qualities like self-esteem, like trusting the word, like, which is a big challenge now in these days, like how to nourish the curiosity, and all these things have to be in the foreground. Of course, as skilled Waldorf teachers, you know that. The question is just that you keep that in mind at any stage, that whatever you are doing with this assessment. So this is my first thing. It has something to do also with a kind of a spiritual aspect. Now I work with very tiny classes. I must say I have now together class 9 and class 10 in this very, very little school. There are 2 pupils in class 9 and there are 4 pupils in class 10, and I have them together, and all these youngsters are, yeah, I may say burnt children, children which had a difficult background. They left their public schools often in a miserable shape, and they are not very what shall I say? They are not very happy to be in school at all. They would rather like to be in their computer. So then I do physics with them, and there are two main aspects. The one is, of course, that we try to do some physics together, but the other is that every morning I talk to them, or we recitate, or we do poems. I did a poem the other day with them, which is from Emily Dickinson. You probably know Emily Dickinson. And I tell them that this woman was incredibly alone. She was not a poor woman, but she had no one, and she was longing for a person to live with all her life, which never came. And then she had this question, why do I live? What is, so to say, the purpose? And just by saying this question out in the room, I bring the reality of school to quite a different level, before we then go to all these things we also have to do. And then she wrote this little poem, which you maybe know, this poem which we recitate together, where she writes, "If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can ease one life the aching, or cool one pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain." And when you do that in the classroom, when I do that, then it is not only very silent, but incredibly attentive. Then we are, so to say, in a space, in a poetic space, which is, so to say, the fundament for all work we have to do. And it creates a trust, which is utmost important as a background for any kind of assessment we do, however we do. Now, today I talked with them about assessment. I gave them this paper, which I have to fill in. There are these forms, I don't know how this is in the Netherlands, but we have then these forms, and we have somehow to fill that in. And then I said, I will not do that, you do that. You know yourself much better than me, so why shall I use my time for that? So you can do that if you turn the paper, you can see on the back side the criteria for this and that, for whatever you have to look at. Then when you have done it, I will look at it. So then you give it to me, then I will tell you then something. I have done that for many, many years. I've never written. I'm too lazy to write these reports on the students, so they do it themselves. It's a super thing to do, because they are mostly I would say, really more than half of them write a correct judgment of their own work, or they make it much more strict than I would have done it. Very, very seldom, a student has a higher view on the own work than I would think. So this is a practical suggestion how to work with that you are quite open, at least from a certain age, and these are now 14, 15 years, you see, we have to do this. This is a work we have to do. You need it for your next school and all these things we have. So let's do it. And then and not somehow to come into that situation where the teacher also radiates the feeling that this is a real picture of you, because this is not a real picture of anyone. This is just a kind of a paperwork we have to do, which is an aspect of the school life, but it does not tell anything about you. Do you agree in that? Some comments just about that. I don't know, Wouter, is it possible for people to speak now, or are they muted?
Yes, it's possible. If you press the space bar, spatiebalk, then you can unmute yourself for just the time that you push on the space bar. So if you want to comment, please do. But
yeah, I can comment. Well, there were two things which kind of got my attention, Godi, in what you said. You said our education is for lifetime. You also said that we are all skilled Waldorf teachers, and what also struck me is that you say like poetry is a fundament in a way to reach out to children, as in this case you used the poem of Emily Dickinson. And I can very much relate to this as a base of feeling also. We are not just our heads. The heart is so important in the end. That is life, brings life as close as it can. I was just also wondering what exactly do you mean by skilled Waldorf teachers?
I say, you can hear me?
Yes.
I say that in respect of you, I do not know you, but I presume that you are skilled Waldorf teachers. That I guess that you are not students anymore, that you are not greenhorns,
No.
that you
No.
know something both about the art of teaching and about the fundament of Waldorf. That's what I meant.
Okay. And could you, because I think that you maybe also have like your concrete image of what is a skilled Waldorf teacher, and as your heart so much goes out to teaching, especially as a Waldorf teacher, I'm very curious. What to you is? How would you say
Because
this is?
I've worked for more than 10 years in teacher education, and the question from time to time comes up, what is this? First of all, I would say I want you, a good Waldorf teacher is an artist, is an artist in the art of teaching. I fight sometimes when I do public lectures or in public schools when I say that it's important to know that the teaching is not a science. And pedagogy is not a science. The varieties are far too big. The biggest research which have been done in pedagogy ever, I think, was this John Hattie. I don't know, was he from New Zealand or what? And he had, I don't know what, 50,000 studies behind his work, his big meta study. But still, he has not seen my grandchild. And not your children either. So the variety in the classroom and the variety of children and of relations is far too big. So I think the one is to be an artist. To be artist has three aspects. The one is, of course, you need to know your subject. You need to know what you talk about. You have to you need somehow to be very familiar with it. That's obvious. And the other side, you need a certain fundamental understanding of the psychology in the classroom. You need an understanding of the development of the child in this. We have a lot of help in Waldorf pedagogy, and we are a bit alone on it because the development of children is not a central issue in most in mainstream pedagogical educations anymore. They do not differ between an 8-year-old and a 13-year-old when it comes to teaching of subject. And then I could say overall, I could say, Ivo, that I would say that if I look for two things. The one is there a genuine love to the child, a genuine interest in a child or in the student, this emotional fundament which my friend now obviously has lost in his life, and the other thing is there a genuine interest in the subject, a fascination of the subject. Because what we have to do, we have to bring together the essence or the being, what the Germans call das Wesen, the being in the subject with the being, the essence in the child, in the human. This is, so to say, for me, what I mean when I say a skilled Waldorf teacher. Was that an answer you can use for something? Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, I want to correct a little bit. I didn't say we need the poetry, we need the arts, we need the other approach, also the aesthetics. You know, everything which has to do with the aesthetical or the emotional aspects. I just had a long lecture. I wrote a long lecture to a priest in the Protestant church here in Norway. I was in one of his we were there with the Waldorf school to make some Christmas singing and all that. And then I said to him, you destroyed the atmosphere completely. because it was so much music there, and it was so much awe. You know, the English expression awe in the word awful, this admiration, the German staunen. Do you have a word for that in Dutch? This admiration for something bigger which we do not understand. And then he came and made this everyday talk, and this all together in the head, instead of being in the space. And then I wrote to him also, part of the fascination is also the silence, that you create spaces where you can be in another dimension. And the best dialogues with youngsters I had in silence, with no words, where we understood each other, where something is on another dimension. So it is not only the poetry, but the poetry is a good example. I work in Norway. This I didn't tell you. I work in Norway now because I'm independent. So I work quite a lot with dropouts. These are young adults which have given up school and working life, and they have often the self-esteem of zero. I mean, they really give up, and the way to approach them is that I tell them fairy tales. When it comes to the assessment, there is a fairy tale figure which I guess you also know in the Dutch tradition. It is in Norway we call him Askeladd. It is the youngest of the three sons. You know, it's a kind of a pattern in many fairy tales. There are three sons or three daughters, or seven daughters or seven sons, and then the older one are the clever. In Norway, these are three brothers, and the older brothers, they are the clever ones. They go out in the world. They have everything they need. They have Mercedes. They have the best degrees from gymnasium. They have money from the father. And they have everything, and they fail in the fairy tale. They cannot succeed somehow, and then the last one says, "I want to try too," because the oldest one, they have been catched in Norway and Iceland. We have a figure which we call the troll. Have you heard about the troll? The troll does exist only in these two countries' tradition. The Swedes don't know it. They are nicer. But we have the troll, and they are a bit different, the Icelandic and the Norwegian troll. But the troll does something with the people, which is interesting. This, when they come, those oldest brothers, they go to out in their life. They have big success somewhere. They find their wonderful princesses. They have, I'm sure they have the best exams as lawyers or dentists or something cool. And then they come home, and on the way home they have to cross the mountains in Norway. You have always to cross the mountains, and then they are catched by the troll. And now the troll does something to them which is utmost interesting. He turns them into stone. He doesn't kill them. But he does that they turn into stone. That means they go into a stagnation. And the stagnation is a life experience which you all know. I mean, you all know when very normal women, men around 35, 38, 40 years know precisely what the stagnation is. You know, when you have this feeling that you have done everything right, and suddenly, so what? What was this life? The women, I talked with women, they come to an age where they suddenly feel they are just a piece of furniture at home. What is that? What kind of life is that? This stagnation. And that's interesting that in the fairy tale you have this succeeding in school, this being clever and doing everything right, which leads nowhere. And then you have this youngest one which says to the father, "I also want to try my life." And then the father said, "No, please, not you. You are the last one I have, and beside of that, you are so stupid. So how will you manage it? This figure has in all languages a very nasty name. In Norway, we call him Askeladd. This is the ash lad. It is in German, the Dumme Hans. In Russia, Ivan Durak or Ivan Durachok. In all countries. Do you have a Dutch version of that? Is there a Dutch youngest boy in the fairy tale?
Domme Hans.
Ja, Domme Hans, toch?
There you have him, yeah. A typical name. And it's not nice, you know, they don't talk nice about him. He's the stupid one. And then he says he has another kind of attitude. He has this life competence I am talking about. Because he says, well, it does not matter, I try anyway. And he goes with nothing, he has nothing, and he goes out in the world. And then he meets the world with a different attitude. An attitude where there is no exam for. You know, for example, he passes an apple tree, and then the apples are shouting, pick us, we are ready. You have to pick us now, otherwise we fall down and rotten. And then he does that because that's what you have to do in life. And then he passes some ovens where the bread is shouting out of the oven, take us out, otherwise we burn. And then we are destroyed. And he does that because it all the time relates to what life is bringing to him, so to say. He is not clever in that sense that he knows much or so, but he relates to life. He is himself. And then he comes forward, and that's a very strong moment when I talk to these 25-year-old unemployed people. And I said, and then he comes on the road, he meets a fish in the forest on the road. And the fish says, please help me. I am on the wrong way. It went wrong for me in my life. And then he thinks, yeah, this cannot be, a fish cannot be in the middle of the forest, and he helps the fish out in the water. And you know this pattern from the fairy tales. I hope you have not forgotten it. In the end, of course, he gets help from the apples and from the bread and from the fish. And in Norway, then, this is this beautiful moment when he's coming on this very old, very, very miserable horse. He has just bones and skin. And then he meets the wolf. And the wolf in Scandinavian fairy tales is a very good, a very positive, a very warm figure. And the wolf says, please help me, I'm starving. And then he says, Askeladd says, well, I have nothing more I can give you. And then the wolf says, well, the horse you are sitting on, maybe I can have that. And then he's a little bit in doubt because the horse is also alive, but on the other hand, he has the average age to die, if you know. And then he says, he gives the horse to the wolf, and then the wolf is satisfied, and he it turns out to be a much, much better horse than the horse ever has been. And with this boy on the back, he goes right to the place where the brothers have been turned into stone. And then it comes to this wonderful meeting between this vitality and the troll. The troll is an interesting thing. The troll is a mighty figure, very powerful, but in a way very stupid. He has not the understanding of life. He uses his bare naked power, and he needs control, you know. It's an interesting thing. I thought when I was told once in the Norwegian radio about the troll, because I'm so fascinated of this figure, and I said the troll has a problem, and that is that the troll cannot deal with light. The troll needs darkness to exist. They explode when they come into light, and then of course I said they got a big problem in the 19th century when the electricity came, because then there was light everywhere. and what should the troll do? Then they went underground, and then they made an underground a troll school where they educated a generation of trolls which are light resistant. They are especially good in neon light. You can find them in all offices now. And what they did not manage is to to hide the name, really. So you can hear it every time you hear the word control. That word troll is still a little bit in it, you know. And the boss of this troll group, they have the name quality control. That's the boss of them. And you know, the joke I do that the problem with the assessments is that we try to control things which are not controllable. We try to put numbers on things which we cannot catch. And in such stories, I tell them this. You understand that they feel somehow in this story, this deep identification. That is why these fairy tales exist. That is why they have survived, and I hope they will survive forever, because we tell them, we talk another language. And when we do that with them, then we can also say, yeah, and now we have to do this and this and this and this to please the system. That's not the problem. That is one aspect I wanted to give you, that you in many ways tell the youngsters life is about something else. We have to do this in this system, but life is about something else. Sometimes I can say that directly also to the parents. I say, you know, the school has two tasks. The one task is we have to prepare the children or the youngsters for a given society. That's obvious. That's our task. We have to do that. But we should not forget the other task, and that is that we have to enable our children to change the society. We have to enable them to cope with the future we do not know. This is very interesting now in this Corona time, where we have really no idea what comes to our children or to us in the next year or in 5 years. So how shall we prepare them for something we don't know? You know, this is this mystery of the classroom, I call it, that we prepare the children for a future we do not know. This is also important, that it shines through behind all the assessments, that it becomes clear. And then there is something maybe which I want to mention, which is about the wisdom of life. There is something, when you look at all the curriculums from whatever country you can look, you will find a lot of words about knowledge, maybe about skills even, maybe about attitude, but you do never find the word wisdom. Yeah? Do you have the same word in Dutch? Weisheit. What do you call it?
Wijsheid.
Weisheit, wisdom. It's very nice. In the Slavic language, they call it modrost. And modrost comes from the color blue. Modro is blue. It's very beautiful. That somehow the wisdom, the blue sky, the deepness of this color is in the word wisdom. I like it very much. And what is wisdom? There is a wonderful little humoresque Norwegian story, which is just pure, it's meant humoristic, but it's incredibly deep when you reflect a bit on it. And that is, I don't know whether you know it, it's called The Seventh Father in the House. And the seventh father in the house in Norway is today a kind of an expression which describes those which are in real power. You know, you can have a president or a king or whatever, but then there is a seventh father in the house somewhere. And the story is as I tell you now. There is a man walking on the road through his life, and then he comes to a place where he wants to rest. He has to be somewhere. He has to belong somewhere. And then he comes to a house, and outside the house, in the garden, is an old man. And then this traveler asks the old man, "Can I be in your house, please?" And then the old man stops working and says, "Yeah, you should not ask me. You should ask my father." And where is your father? And then he points at the door, and in the door is a much older man. And then he goes to him and says, the traveler goes to him and says, "Can I stay in your house?" And then this very old man says, "Oh, you should not ask me. You should ask my father." And then he goes into the kitchen, and there is a much older man. And he asks him, and the story repeats with children. I would ritualize, tell the same sentences every time, but he also says, go and ask my father. And then he comes into the living room, and then he comes from the living room. There is the next father is in the bed. It's already in the bed. And then he says, you have to ask my father, and his father is in the cradle where the babies are. And now he is a very tiny old figure. And he asked him, can I stay in your house? And he said, oh, you should not ask me, you should ask my father. And then he points at the horn on the wall. And the horn on the wall is the place where you put the wishes. Maybe you have a similar traditions in Holland with a sock, or I have seen different things. The horn in the wall is where the dish is. And then he looks at this horn, and out of that horn looks a figure which is almost an embryo. He is so tiny, and then he asks, can I stay in your house? Then he says, yes, you may. That's the seventh father in the house. And the wonderful thing with this humoresque is that the time stream are crossing. On one side, he becomes older and older and older. On the other side, he becomes younger and younger and younger. You come to the cradle, and in the end, you are unborn. You're even unborn. And this melting together of the wisdom of the old and, so to say, the wisdom of the newborn, that they meet in life. And this is, so to say, the essence when you want to understand where to be. These are pictures, imaginations I do with the children, or which I recommend you to do in every age. I have never, when I talk about these things, I have never seen someone not completely catched by the pictures. And I have worked with people which were criminals. They came out of prison. Then you start to tell the fairy tale, and then they sit with open mouth and listen to it, that we touch something which is deeper. This is for me the essence. And then you do whatever you want with your assessments. This is not so very much my issue, although I have to add the one thing I told to you of a practical thing is that I talk a lot about it, and I involve them in the process. It's nothing I do in the office. I do it together with them. And another thing I have done for many years is that I tell the class, tomorrow we have a test. Then they get nervous. And then I say, and you sit together with your friend or two friends, it's up to you. And then you work with the subject, what we have done the last 2 weeks or whatever it is, you work with it. And then afterwards, we do the test. And then they will sit together and they work. And then I say, yeah, now the test comes. And then they want to go, they go to their places and say, no, stay together. Maybe you can help each other. It's always so that you get much better if you have help. I mean, this is how it is in life. You know, in what we call cheating in the school, in normal life, we call cooperation. So cooperate, please. And then it's interesting because then they do the test. And this is the most intensive learning period in the last 2 weeks, because now they discuss. You know, now I have forgotten it. Do you remember? And then they help each other, you know, in a way that you bring a dynamic. And then I can do that for several times. And then in between, I can also say, so now we do an individual test. No? But then the fear is already gone. This panic of it, because they understand that I'm joking a little bit. We had that, I don't know you, whether when you have younger, I had my class for many years, and in class 7, I remember, then suddenly one girl said, oh, they learn much more in a public school. Then I said, what do they learn? We cannot live with that they know more than us. Is it possible? And then they had to think what. And then they found out, well, they know the capitals of the world. And then I said, we will do that. And then we had 3 weeks where we only worked with capitals every morning. In the end, they knew Trinidad and Tobago and all of it, you know. And then they laughed. It was kind of a joy moment that we were learning, and they all understood it's a bit a joke. We learn a lot of things, and you know, somehow to take this fear away by different ways to play with it. And then the first moment is the inner attitude. The second moment of the lecture is that you play with the way to examine them. Do not never pretend that this is the very essence of what we are doing. It is something we also have to do, but it is not the essence of what we are doing. And children have to, or youngsters have to feel that strongly, that this is not the essential thing. And the third point is something I would like to ask you how you do, because for me the question is, what do we do with those students which we know cannot cope with the test? Those which we already know from the beginning will not achieve. Because I see that when I travel around, that even the Waldorf schools, they harass with them. They ask them. I mean, it's absurd. If you have a pupil in any class and you know this child cannot do this mathematics, what you are teaching, and then it's for me absurd that you test it. That you bring this child again and again into a situation where it feels I'm no good. And mathematics is a typical example, because mathematics is connected to very much stress, very much fear. We can ask why, because when children come home and they cannot sing, then the parents say, so what? They cannot sing. I mean, what's that? Or if they are not good in running around in sports, then they say, so what? You know, and if they cannot write a poem, so what? We are completely relaxed. But when they come home and they are not good in mathematics, and all parents think they will die and go to hell. It has an incredible dimension. That's why I use mathematics often as an example. Because this is the field where we, so to say, cultivate the fear. So my question to you, the group, is what are you doing with students which you already know will not achieve in a test? What are you doing with them?
We have 5 more minutes.
Sorry? Time for?
5 more minutes for this question.
Yeah. Yes, good. So please, the word is yours, whoever.
Well, you know, the so-called Hauptunterricht, right? Hoofdonderwijs, periodeonderwijs, we say in Holland. I don't test anymore with some kind of idea. You get certain questions asked and you need to give the correct answer. I try to give them a creative assignment for different options they can choose, or they can also come with some kind of idea of their own. Which they can always put in something of themselves, and they always learn something, because I teach history. No one is bad in history. You can always find a way to involve people. So for example, I now teach Second World War, and of course the Holocaust for me is one of the things that I really find very important, that the children learn about this. And I then in the end ask them to make, for example, a monument for victims of Holocaust, and then they are trying to give their own kind of picture of this. So they need to write something about it and make an image which for them does justice to the people who had to suffer so much. This, of course, a rather extreme subject, but just to give an example.
Thank you.
My subject is geography, and I have some kids that they have the whole stress element so much in their system that they actually always fail the tests. And at some point I decided with them that they don't revise for a test, they just follow the courses and they do the test because it's in school time and you're there anyway. And I will check what was right and what was wrong, but it will not be a note. I will not, I'll just communicate it with you. And usually then they do it much better because the pressure is off.
Yeah, that's a very good example how to take away the pressure, because then you, as you said, you can do a lot of things if they feel this is and not the end of the world. You know, which today many often I'm invited to public gymnasiums. Even I've been in the best in Oslo, the one of the gymnasiums with the best reputation. And they said when I started, there were 80 teachers or so. They said, why do you invite me? You do very well. So what's the point? And then she said, no, it's a catastrophe. In the end, it's a catastrophe. And then I say, why? Because we have girls, boys, which have get deep stress symptoms when in the age of 16, 17, because it's so much in the time in the world, you know. If you look at the television, everything is a competition. I mean, this is absurd. They are competing not only in singing, but in making food, in sewing dresses, and it's always the same pattern in this way of kind of neoliberal TV, you know, where it's always every week one goes out, one is kicked out. That's a kind of a pattern. So they grow up in this atmosphere that they think everything is about that. There is also a detail which I want to add, and that is give them respect and acknowledge if they help each other. This is also a very important thing which is punished in our society. It is helping each other. And this is wonderful when you see a socially skilled student which uses the energy to help another one. That is simply brilliant, and it has to be recognized. It has to be seen by the teacher and encouraged. That is wonderful. The world will need you. You know, the world will need those people. Brilliant, good example. Thank you.
Maybe try to wrap it up a bit, Godi. Is that okay?
Three things once more. The inner attitude, most important, which you also have to cultivate in the collegiums, which you have somehow to keep alive. You know, that it is about the attitude. This meeting with this old student colleague of mine told me that when he brings this attitude into the classroom, that he hates to be there, that he, you know, then he cannot give an assessment which has any value at all. He cannot work, because the children feel almost I'm sorry. Because the children feel almost that he is an enemy somehow. So this is very, very important. And then again, because we didn't have a lot of time for the last point, try to talk together when you have students which are not achieving. How can we work with these students without completely destroying their self-esteem? You know, what can we do there? Yeah, that is what I had, Wouter. Is that good enough?